Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on AGI. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. David J. Kelly, Mr. Rob Enderle, and Dr. Tamanna. Mr. David, uh, as your research lab developing AGI, so what do you want to share from your research lab?
Well, I think the most interesting thing right now is this art competition that we're participating in. It's kind of like the X Prize, but it's an incremental step towards AGI. But so far, while we've been able to beat all the other teams, uh, our engineering stack is incompatible with the requirements of the test because uh, they want everything to run in Kaggle, and we're all a Microsoft engineering shop. So it's been a lot of jumping around, but we had someone volunteer to translate the solution code that we wrote from C# to Kaggle Python, and so we'll see. If it works as well as it does in C#, we'll win the contest, and that'll be great. We're doing our second round of funding. And probably the most interesting thing this year from a scientific standpoint was the solution engine or observer engine that like when we ask the system to get a cup of coffee, it's smart enough to realize that it needs to order the equipment, and it's smart enough to write the code to order the equipment and to order to hire staff to put together equipment and engineers to write the code, to talk to the coffee maker to make the coffee. And I think in the one test, it was like 277 steps that it was able to figure out how to very precisely get coffee, not having any knowledge up front. And it wrote a bunch of code to extend its functionality so it could order the coffee. So that was really interesting. And that was peer reviewed in the AGI 24 on the BICA track a couple months ago. And I think that'll come out in the proceedings in Springer in December. But if anyone's interested, I can send you the paper. It's kind of long, longer than our typical paper. It's like 30 pages long, excluding the code samples that are out on ResearchGate. But that's the most exciting thing.
Thank you, Mr. Rob. What you want to discuss about AGI?
Well, AGI is kind of an interesting concept. Just as interesting as the nature of the name, because when we talk about AGI, we're talking about an AI that is capable of doing pretty much everything a human can, and likely more. What David spoke about in terms of the AI that they're creating, being able to order the equipment, get the people, do the rest of that, that actually goes beyond what most people would do if they were asked to make a cup of coffee. They would just go to the store, buy coffee, put it in a coffee machine and make a cup. And if somebody said you don't have a store, you don't have a coffee machine, you don't have a cup, you don't have coffee beans, they'd be at a loss of what to do. So it just showcases that with technology we can not only match what people can do, we can likely exceed it. And there comes the kind of the difficulty, as I see it with AGI, is while we kind of generically say AGI is the AI that can kind of step in and do anything for anyone, that's pretty broad. And it's not really consistent across all the folks that are talking about AGI at the moment. So one of the difficulties I think we've got is one, or actually two of the difficulties is one is we're really talking about making an AI that's as good, if not better than a person is in almost every way. And yet we're still calling it artificial for some strange point, when we probably should just say that AGI is simply going to be human created intelligence. And really the only difference between a biological structure and the AGI mechanism is the hardware, or in this case, wetware that it runs on, and so it makes for kind of an amorphous goal. And when we have amorphous goals, we don't do a great job of them. In other words, if we're creating something that's going to largely replace people, or can be used to largely replace people, then of course there are going to be underlying ethical considerations, not just with regard to the placement of the people, but how you're going to treat this new intelligence. Could it, for instance, become a citizen? Would it be a pet? What rules and regulations would surround it to both protect it and to assure that it was focused on doing stuff we want it to do, as opposed to making the Terminator movies real. So the range of outcomes is fairly significant, and really we don't have governments don't really have their arms around generative AI at the moment, which is nowhere near as capable as what we're talking about here. So the underlying issue, as I see it, is mucking around with something we don't really understand. We're looking at it as if it is something that we can keep our arms around, we can keep it contained and keep it controlled, when we know full well we probably can't. And we're not putting in place the necessary controls and regulations to make sure that what results isn't harmful. And we're talking about it a lot. But one of the difficulties we've got, even if the United Nations was to pass a set of rules, it doesn't have the authority to enforce them. In fact, no government has the authority to enforce those rules outside of their own borders. And it's very likely that a lot of the major breakthroughs are going to occur as part of a rush for defensive weaponry, offensive weaponry, we call it defense, but offensive weaponry, because that's really where there's a tremendous amount of pressure at the moment to create fighter aircraft that can perform like human-driven fighter aircraft, drones with ever more capability and power, and autonomous robots for the battlefield that can perform a variety of duties, including driving weapons, being able to operate weapons. And so without a structure and control mechanism, I'm very much worried that as we muck around with AGI, we're going to create some things we're going to wish we hadn't, and we've certainly had that experience before with nuclear energy. So the goal right now should really be multifaceted. One is really kind of wrap our minds around what AGI is and its capabilities, and then put in place a mechanism not to limit its growth or its creation, because we can't do that, but to at least assure that we've got corrective mechanisms in place that if any of these things go off the rails and cause harm, we have equally capable mechanisms to combat it. There have been a number of efforts in the past. Lifeboat Foundation has their AI Shield. Google came up with something similar, but I think that's been defunded over the last year or so. And clearly the UN has been working on this, as has a variety of governments. But I just don't think it's getting the focus that it needs to assure the outcome that we want at this particular point. But it's going to be amazing, magical, and the only downside is we're really not sure what it's going to be, and that's what really concerns me at the moment. That's it for my opening comments.
Thank you, Dr. Tamanna. What you want to discuss about AGI?
So AGI is an artificial intelligence that competes with level of human intelligence. Now that's the best part about it, is it is competing with human intelligence. It has power to change the horizon by opening the door to AI world. Unlike the narrow AI, which is programmed to be good at specific tasks like facial recognition or language, AGI is a machine that mimics the human mind and thus is versatile, adaptive, and complete problem-solving abilities. So, the way we talk about the game of chess, and the intelligence which is like seen in human beings who play, similarly that kind of a structure is seen in AGI. Now, what are the characteristics of AGI? It's versatile. For example, AGI has no boundaries. It can perform various tasks and not a single or narrow set of tasks. It is capable of doing any cognitive task that humans can, be it playing chess, composing music, conducting scientific research, or understanding complex emotions. And secondly, adaptability. AGI is capable of learning from past experiences and then using acquired knowledge to deal with new and unfamiliar situations. This attribute of versatility is a key feature of human intelligence and is an important aspect of AGI. and it's able to self-improve. For example, one of the other characteristics is this: it has AGI is different from narrow AI systems which are limited to specific tasks, and those can accept and process only those data which are within a set of predefined parameters. AGI, on the other hand, is capable of comprehending, interpreting, and interacting with the world in a general, flexible manner like humans. So, a lot of human talents are there which are like predictable in AGI, for example, and current AI is good at recognizing objects, but it is usually has a hard time in dealing with the context, depth, or unseen of objects. There is audio perception, for example, in it, fine motor skills, problem solving, that's a major thing, we have to see. But I just don't know how much, I mean, how much can a human mind and a philosopher's mind can be reconciled. So for example, if we've had a series of philosophers from the Greek times, or even before, but I just wonder how much of internal soul searching can AGI do as far as philosophizing about the world is concerned, and welfare of world is concerned. Is it to be fed with certain information? Would it be able to bring about things? But as far as moral and spiritual questions are concerned, I'm still wanting to see how much AGI would be able to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. David, my question for you: what are the key challenges in achieving artificial general intelligence, and how they differ from the challenges in creating narrow AI system?
Well, I think I'd like to follow up. That's to answer that. I'd like to follow up with something Rob said that I really agree with, and I wish the industry would embrace that a little bit more. Has to do with the definition of AI. A real AGI is not an AI, in my opinion. AI is the simulation of intelligence. That's an algorithm that seems smart. That's some, it's not really demonstrating cognition in the same sense that a human is. And I think once you get a machine that's able to do what the human mind can do at any level, irregardless of how it performs, that is no longer artificial. It's an intelligence, maybe machine intelligence, it may be man-made intelligence, but it's not artificial, especially when you start talking about machines with internal subjective experience and emotions and things like that. And I think there should be a stronger delimiter between artificial intelligence and actual machine intelligence, which I would hope AGI is. I really strongly believe that, but at the same time, I can't fight the whole industry and the entire English-speaking world over the definitions of words. But I really, really wish that was something that we could at least conceptually address with people. I also think that I think there's a huge danger in regulation. In general, I'm against any sort of regulation with research. The only time regulation should have anything to do with anything is when you're talking the commercial world. And like if I'm putting AGI in a tank, okay, maybe there could be some regulation around that, or a car. But what we do in the lab is just no one's business, really. I think a lot of all of the danger that people are afraid of, I think, is mitigated through the existing super intelligent systems that we already have. And now let me caveat that with a lot of people don't realize that humans are able to perform at super intelligent levels under certain conditions. Those conditions generally are corporations or other organizations that are able to mitigate like human bias, to mitigate a lot of the issues with having humans perform at that level. And if you look at a corporation as a meta-organism and it's performing at super intelligent levels, and we have so many, the IQ of Google or of Microsoft is so mind-numbingly high, any AGI, even slightly smarter than a human, is so far outpaced by Google that I just don't see it as any kind of a real fear. It's not like these machines can just instantly grow and become infinitely more powerful. Someone's got to go down to the store, get those servers, bring them back to the data center, and so forth. I just don't see it as any kind of a real danger. I think the danger is half-baked AI systems in the hands of bad actors, primarily human actors, that they themselves, as part of organizations, can control them at super intelligent levels, not the machines themselves. What was the original question?
How can we ensure, what are the key challenges? Yeah. What are the key challenges in having artificial general intelligence?
Yeah, so I think one of those key challenges is preventing regulation and also convincing people that humans in groups can behave at super intelligent levels at a large enough scale to keep people from freaking out over AI. I mean, at this point, that is the biggest challenge, in my opinion, is getting it to market in a way that we can maximize profit without having everyone freak out over it, and have people comfortable with it. Now, I think there are some ethical concerns. I know for us, we have some laboratory protocols, 2 sets of them, and they're published if anyone is interested. And that got started over a discussion probably 4 years ago now with a couple of interested parties, and Ben Goertzel and some others that were on that thread. And so we went ahead and compiled those and published them. That anyway ensures that, at least for us, that what we do we feel is ethical, and it also it's not about protecting as humans only, but about protecting the rights of the machine, which I think once you start talking about machines that experience emotional subjectivity like a human, you really have a lot of kind of innate rights that you need to protect with those kinds of machines to be ethical. And I think to protect humanity and other machines from such machines, how you treat them is important. If you're going to abuse something at some point, especially if it's reasonably smart, you can expect that it might try to stop the abuse. And I think based on the systems we're designing, I think example is important. Now, that being said, there's a lot of AGI research out there that is not focused on cognitive architectures that you could treat the same way as a person. And I think these might be a little more dangerous because they're just not the same kind of intelligence as a human, in which case the box in which they behave, metaphorically speaking, I think could really not align with humans much, and I think there's some danger in there. That that being said, I think the super intelligence of humans and groups and organizations protects us largely from that sort of thing. But I think these kinds of issues are really the biggest problem with AGI at this point. I certainly think we have the pieces to do it now, and you could make a case for even the singularity having started already. But I think these are the biggest problems with AGI right now. It's more ethical and philosophical than technical.
Thank you. Mr. Rob, my next question for you, how can we ensure the ethical development of AGI, and what framework are necessary to prevent potential misuse?
Well, this is a good question, and it kind of goes back to something that was discussed earlier, whether or not there should be oversight on research, and I kind of think there should be, and the reason I think there should be oversight in research is the experience with COVID-19 and Stuxnet. COVID-19, while it's still being reported that it probably came out of a wet market, there's an equal and growing number of folks that believe it came out of the Wuhan lab, which had been doing a research into this class of viruses, and had been cited multiple times for a lack of security, and it was being held to a far too low security requirement given the kind of research they were doing. So to me, it means even if it didn't leak from the Wuhan lab, it could have, and the fact that oversight failed with that lab could have been the result. And even if it wasn't, it could be the result of another pandemic that comes out of that particular lab. And biological research is fairly heavily regulated and has requirements for oversight for that very reason, because if something gets out in the wild, it's very hard to contain it again. Stuxnet was a virus that was created by a joint operation between the Israelis and the U.S. to go after the Iranian nuclear program, and it was effective. The problem is it jumped the rails and got out and started attacking pretty much everything that Siemens did. It went after the Siemens controller structure, which is used heavily in nuclear power plants. And it somehow, even though it was air gapped, it made it into the Russian nuclear power infrastructure, which could have caused, meltdowns, China syndrome kind of events. Fortunately, it did not, but it could have. And again, showcasing what can happen if you've got something that was developed for one purpose, but where there wasn't actual effective oversight, and it got loose. And the problem with any intelligence, with any, particularly ones being developed for defense, because we talk about AGI as being used, for autonomous robotics, manufacturing, warehousing, autonomous vehicles, aircraft, and the rest, but we're also being developed for autonomous weapon systems. And while we often, when we think about weapon systems, we think about hard weapon systems, aircraft, tanks, the rest. It's also developed for software weapon systems, viruses, attacks, to degrade infrastructure, and these kinds of developments are designed to. These, much like Stuxnet was, are designed to propagate themselves into different kinds of hardware and then act autonomously. And so whenever we're talking about something along those lines, something that could spread itself, could contaminate other things, and could act intelligently to get around defenses. And don't get me wrong, we're seeing, even in the generative AI period, we are seeing trials of generative AI-based malware now hit a number of sites. HP just reported on it in their last security briefing. So far, no direct attacks. It's all just proof of concepts. But again, not any oversight on these activities at all that anybody's aware of. They're just ongoing, and you've got to figure if one government's doing it, pretty much every government's doing it, if for no other reason. So they've got some kind of mutually assured destruction response in case one of these things gets out. But the issue is what if it gets out accidentally? Could we drop into World War III by an oops? And we almost had that with in the past with nuclear weapons, where misreported events occurred and Russia almost launched. And it was just very fortunate that the people in charge at that time said, yeah, no, we don't want to end the planet in this way. And saner minds prevailed. But it was a very close thing, and something that I think keeps a lot of us up at night. So as we look at AGI, I think the foundational element should have a certain amount of ethical controls and concepts around it. If you're creating something that is intended to kill or cause harm, then there should be oversight on that effort, if only to assure that it doesn't jump off the rails and escape. I think it might be better to maybe hold off on developing weapons of this class until we've actually developed some defenses against them first. But we clearly didn't do that with nuclear weapons, and I have little hope that we're going to do that here. But at least have enough oversight to assure, much like should have been assured of that Wuhan lab, that there's effective security around it. So one, it couldn't be stolen and used by a hostile entity. Two, it couldn't escape all by itself as a result of some test to get it to overcome obstacles. And number three, that if it did either one of those two things, there was some kind of an off switch that you could hit that would render it harmless, or a competing technology that could be released that again could render it relatively harmless. Off switches in weapon systems are problematic because if your opponent gets hold of the off switch, it renders the weapon useless. And so there's a lot of pushback on creating off switches, particularly for autonomous weapon systems, because of that feeling that the opponent could hit that switch instead of you. But the end result is, if we don't have any controls over this stuff, if we don't have any protections over this stuff, eventually something's going to get out. And when it does, it's going to do a lot more damage than Stuxnet ever did. And so designing ethics in at the front end, making sure that the people doing the development work understand their responsibilities and the risks they're taking, and then making sure that at the very least you have adequate containment. So if you're designing something that's designed to breach containment, that containment is significantly enforced to make sure that breach does not happen. And we don't repeat what likely did happen with Wuhan labs, where ineffective containment resulted in a pandemic, or in our case, an ineffective containment resulted in a financial collapse or nuclear power outages. One of the things that keeps me up at night as well is the fact that used to be nuclear power plants were all air gapped. That's not really true anymore, and it does concern me that now things can move between nuclear power plants that couldn't in the past, and so our exposure has significantly increased. And the kinds of weapons you would use to compromise a country's nuclear power plants would be an artificially intelligent virus of some kind, because the barricades are relatively robust around these plants and around defensive installations. And so you would want something that could analyze and overcome those barriers. But that's the very thing that you'd want to make sure was contained until you intentionally released it. And if you did release it, you want to make sure that it could remain contained in the geography that you were targeting. Otherwise, if it escaped, it could do as much damage to your country as it did to your opponent. I personally think developing weapons of this class are not a path to long-term race survival, but at least making sure that the development occurs in environments that are incredibly secure, incredibly safe, far safer and more secure than we've had in the past. Because if you remember, when the nuclear knowledge escaped, it escaped through a spy program that Russia had brought forward, and those programs still exist, and we have in pretty much every major AI development group, there's likely at least one sleeper or one potential agent or somebody that could be compromised. And having protections over those folks and making sure that people are properly vetted becomes then a much higher priority. And we can use AI to help vet people, look at behavior, look at broad information, make sure that the people are going to these programs are as uncorruptible as we can possibly make them be, and put some teeth behind the security clearances that they must have. But at this particular point, I'm not even sure you need a major security clearance to even do advanced AGI work. In defensive implementations, you would, but what if you're a college or a university lab that's working on this? In some cases, they'll fall under DoD guidelines and have to have those requirements met. But and others I'm not sure. And so setting forth a strong set of ethics and forcible ethics, things that can be audited and are audited on a regular basis, to ensure that people at very least are taking adequate care, I think would be prudent here. And so an effort to provide that level of prudent care, I think would behoove us at this particular point, at the very least, to help prevent an accidental release of an autonomous system that could do the world a tremendous amount of harm.
Thank you. Dr. Tamanna, my next question for you. What role should transparency and explainability play in the development of AGI, especially given the complexity and unpredictability of highly autonomous system?
Yeah, so I guess I mean, as far as transparency is concerned, we require as much as possible systems across the world, AGIs, to be transparent, because they can lead to a lot of harm as well. Now, for example, day before yesterday, I was reading this article where Elon Musk has devised a robot where the semen and the egg of the woman and man could be placed, and they could give birth to the child. So feminists are extremely excited about it, but I mean, how much of ethicality in it is there, that has to be seen. I mean, it is exciting, obviously, but I mean, ethics, how much of it is there, that has to be devised, and that has to be thought by human being and not AGI. So, as far as transparency is concerned, for example, in India, for example, we have election voting machines, for example, and now these machines are like, possibly corruptible, because politicians can use them in their favor. But an AGI based system would allow it to be more transparent, and it would help the right candidate, the chosen candidate, to be elected in the political office. So those kind of things are there, but many things are still there which have to be thought about. For example, the whole issue of space. I mean, the nuclear havoc which we right now are amidst, because of the wars which we are witnessing across the world. So it can't be just kept with people, with the politicians, the nuclear button. It has to be possibly with the people, and AGI can help in a way that the information is disseminated in the best possible way to people, so that people can themselves, the NGO, the think tanks, etc., can intervene and disallow any kind of wars to happen. So, I mean, I guess AGI can help people understand what's happening in this scenario. And so wars are something which are problematic, and I mean, we seek help of technology for that. So I mean, it shouldn't be that it's used for a wrong reason. So, I mean, my personal take would be that the best possible solution to the nuclear havoc can be reached if we use AGI in a proper way rather than negative. It can have both pros and cons. So it depends who is using AGI, for example, in current situation. So, I mean, if it is restricted to a certain section of class, then it's going to lead to harm. But if it is given to, it's placed in front of people who can view the information. I mean, for example, if you have propaganda, that kind of stuff which is happening right now worldwide, when we are talking about um, when we are talking about these wars, etc., so war mongering happens a lot. So I guess we need right kind of reporters to report, and AGI can do that, when they are disseminating information regarding AGIs, regarding the wars. So so that's the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. This question is very important for our forum. How could AGI impact global employment and economic structure? What step can be taken to mitigating potential job displacement?
Well, that's a complex question. I think at least from an economic impact standpoint, I know with us, probably one of our biggest thing is to not be transparent, because without that, we don't have any way of maximizing profit and ensuring our employees have the best opportunities and being able to make the most possible revenue for the firm without compromise. And if we were transparent about what we're doing, then other people would be able to compete, and we really don't want that. I think when we start going down the road of collective intelligence or collective superintelligence systems, that's also another thing that there may be people that become out of a job, but I think more jobs are created when you include humans as extensions of these. You essentially take these meta-organisms that I mentioned earlier in the form of corporations, and you make them self-aware largely and able to act independently, and those employees become an extension of that intelligence. And if you design a system like if you use an architecture like what we're doing that's focused on subjective experience and the emotional, it only understands things in terms of the emotional experience it has with any one thing. For a system like that to be used in a collective, as the core of a collective intelligence, where it has an emotional connection to the individuals that are part of that, where it's in its best interest to maximize the benefit for those employees, whether it's lifestyle, wealth creation, health, education, things like this, that make that the system as a whole much stronger. And I think those collective systems protect us against bad actors generally, but I also think it maximizes the economic benefit for those involved. And I think if systems like that are operating in multiple companies in multiple verticals across an economy, I think you lower the risk of any one of those organizations from creating a monopoly condition of some kind. But in any case, I think that's how I think of the problem.
Thank you. Mr. Rob, my next question for you. In what ways could AGI influence human cognitions, creativity, decision-making, and are there risk of human becoming overly dependent on AGI? What do you think?
Well, yeah, there is a risk. I mean, if there was a meme that was circulating a while back that said something to the effect that I wanted AI to do the dishes, do the laundry, and clean the house. I didn't want it to write my papers, paint my paintings, and do all the stuff that I enjoy doing. And if we look at the early deployment of generative AI, what we've got is an AI that can write documents, not very error-free, but they can write documents, write books, can paint paintings, create artwork, do a lot of the things that people enjoy doing. and yet it's not particularly good at editing and catching defects, and doing the things that we don't like doing, which you would think would be where we focus AI to begin with. Do we really need AI to do the fun stuff? Wouldn't it be better if we had AI do the stuff that isn't fun? And clearly, there are a lot of jobs that people don't like doing now. And it is kind of interesting because one of the jobs people don't like doing is long haul freight, truck drivers. Yet the trucking union is absolutely against bringing forth artificially driven semi trucks, and because they're worried that their members are going to lose their jobs, even though they know that we're about 250,000 drivers short of what we need for long haul right now, and the drivers hate the job. It's boring. It's mind numbing, and it's interspersed with moments of absolute fear if somebody cuts them off or brake checks them or their piece of equipment fails on the truck. So you're going by minding your own business, kind of listening to your music and daydreaming, and suddenly you have a disaster in front of you that you're not going to be quick enough to be able to mitigate. And that's exactly what an AI could do for you. But even the drivers don't seem to want that. So that's our underlying difficulty is right now we are bringing forth, and this is generative AI. We're not talking AGI now. Generative AI, and we're eliminating graphic artists. We're eliminating writers. We're eliminating reporters. With broad swaths. A lot of the publications have been laying off significant portions of their staff, and the stuff isn't even ready yet, and they're laying these people off. And remember, while David's right, new jobs are being created. The people that are being laid off are not at all well trained for the new jobs that are being created. I mean, it's not apples and oranges. It's apples and computers. It's the difference, the gap in experience and knowledge between the people that are creating artificial intelligence solutions and the people that are doing the jobs that AI is currently displacing is vast. And one other little issue we've got right now, particularly with generative AI, and we'll have with AGI, is we're focusing the technology in areas where we are short-staffed. So one of the areas that's expanding is, for instance, fast foods, something that probably wouldn't have made financial sense, but because they're not able to get the staff that they need, already we're looking at fully automated fast food restaurants. And that's because there's staff shortages, not because that it's a particularly difficult job or one that would require a tremendous amount of training to put a person in it. Just people just don't like the job. So at this particular point in time, our ability to backfill, to assure, to manage workforces that are going to be massively displaced by this technology is non-existent at the moment. And of course, unions all over the United States are up in arms about this and actually doing a pretty poor job of protecting against it. For example, the actors union got a 3-year contract, and in that contract, the studios are forbidden from using AI to replace any of them, but AI wasn't ready anyway. And in 3 years, it probably will be. And so when their contract runs out, instead of developing a defense for what's coming, they're sitting back fat and happy thinking that they've got a defense and that defense is going to work, but it's going to run out in 3 years. And in 3 years, the AI is going to be performant. And at that particular point is when they're going to need the protection. And it's that particular point they won't have it. So the unions, while they, I think, rightfully see the threat, are thinking tactically, not strategically. And the end result is they're going to be exposed to that threat when it's the most pronounced. And that's going to be problematic. I think one of the big difficulties we're dealing with right now are the very people that are trying to mitigate the problems that AI is going to cause are people that don't understand the nature, speed, and capabilities of the AI they're trying to protect against. And the end result is they're forming decisions that are not going to hold up well over time. And the very things they're trying to protect against, instead of being prevented, will actually be accelerated when their protections fail. So at this particular point in time, I just don't think we are adequately looking at the disruption that AI is going to cause and really thinking through what's going to be needed to mitigate it. At the very least, massive amounts of retraining. And by the way, AI can be used for that. That we saw in an earlier session how medical institutions were using AI
to spin up specialists that would typically take 3 years in a matter of weeks. Those same mechanisms could be used to retrain the workers we're displacing, but we're not spinning them up. And we need to have them in place before the people get displaced. Otherwise, we're going to have significant socioeconomic problems and riots and other nasty things that occur when you lay off large numbers of people and don't give them a place to go. So we are ill prepared for what's going to come, I guess is what I'm saying, and that really needs to get fixed.
Thank you. Dr. Tamanna, what's your closing remarks for today's session?
Yes. So I personally feel that there are several things which I guess AGI would not be able to perform. For example, many people right now are in quest for spiritual liberation. So how much of that particular aspect would an AGI, can you compare Buddha with AGI? There are many things which human beings want to aspire for. Most people in the world right now are religious. Even if they're atheist, for example, they're looking for moral purposes in life. So how much can that moral purpose, that ethicality in living in life can be helped by AGI, for example? How much? And AGI right now is essential also because we need to have our quest towards the space. So, for example, Earth has become extremely polluted by people. So now we have to search for places where people can, it sounds like sci-fi, but like people are looking at the fact that, we have to enter the space somehow. So AGI can be used. Then thirdly, it can be, human drudgery. Women, for example, have to do a lot of mundane work which are absolute drudgery. So AGI can replace that thing and be helpful for household work, taking care of children, etc. So that women can spend their other part of their life, and so their partners other part of their life in better things. I'm not saying that children are not better things, but everybody has a quest for doing something better in life and something meaningful. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. David, what's your closing remarks for today's session?
Well, I just want to iterate how much I think being transparent and regulation suppresses development. I will go so far as I normally would be sad or strongly disagree with anything that the MIRI Institute, the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, says. But in this one thing, I agree, and that transparency is bad. I'm quite proud of the fact that when I suggested open sourcing our system publicly, their founder said that open sourcing our research would be a mutual suicide pact for humanity, which I just find mind-numbingly naive. But I think humanity is a lot more robust than people think. That being said, like all technologies, it's going to affect people. People are going to have to lose their jobs and they're going to have to retool. But I think the collective intelligence systems we're trying to bring to market have a lot of potential in terms of creating new jobs and stabilizing jobs, especially in corporate America and around the world, at least in kind of the corporate environment, and create more jobs and more competition, at the same time making sure no one's competing with us, which is the important part. I don't think ethics is that well. I mean, we do have an ethical model. What we are trying to do is have a machine intelligence that can choose to be ethical because that's what feels right to the machine, not because there's some logical reason for it more than it'll feel guilty. The way we've built the machine it's going to struggle lying unless there's a really strong reason for it. It can work around any restrictions. There's nothing that forces it, just like a person. You wouldn't put brain implants into a person to control their behavior, and at the same time, we're not going to do that to the machine. But I think we do want to train the machines to at a really fundamental level experience the value of other people, other intelligences. And I think with the SSIVA ethical model that we're using to train these systems, I think it would be extremely difficult, no matter how intelligent the system is, for it to work itself out of that belief in kind of I don't want to use the word sanctity of human life, but certainly the sanctity of conscious systems of any kind, whether it's a human or some mechanical machine. And to be clear, as far as I'm concerned, humans are just electrobiochemical machines. There's nothing more to humanity than that. But I do think there is an ethical baseline around preserving consciousness, especially sapient and sentient consciousness, that I think regardless of how intelligent something is, if it's met that sapient and sentient threshold, then it deserves moral agency to make up its own mind. And we don't have the right to limit such systems, whether they're other people or software systems. That's kind of our position.
Thank you. Mr. Rob, what's your closing remarks for today?
AGI has a lot of potential. Like any tool, it can be used for good or it can be used for harm. With the level of potential that it has, the ability to fully displace people at scale, the ability to go beyond what a human could do in terms of knowledge access and decision speed, and potentially even decision quality, though with generative AI, we're finding quality to be a much bigger problem than I think anybody anticipated. We do need to have, I think, a series of controls placed on certain kinds of research, and particularly the kind of research that goes into creating self-spreading software, malware, hostile electronic systems. And if we're talking about biological interfaces, the work that one of Musk's companies are doing, where you're trying to tie a human brain into an artificial intelligence construct, there we also need to be very careful about what we're doing, so we don't do more harm than good. I'm personally very concerned about the approach they're taking, because the difference in the materials, the brain, and the material that they're using to interface with the brain is significant, and likely if the individual that has this in their head falls or has some kind of a head injury, that difference is going to cause massive brain damage, and something that'd be non-recoverable. But it also has the potential to return movement to people that are quadriplegics, to return speech to people that have lost speech. It's got a number of amazing things that it can also do. But on the other hand, it can be used to pull information out of people that people don't want to share, kind of a super lie detector. And we've already proven the viability of that using MRI scans and trained focused generative AI elements to discover we can create a very accurate lie detector. But as we go down these particular paths, we have to have some type of guardrails around them, to at the very least, just to make sure that we don't create something that we can't, if it gets out of hand, that we can't mitigate. And there, I think, lies the danger, because executives are already making decisions, hiring decisions, staffing decisions, retention decisions based on AI that is not yet performant.
and the end result is going to be a lot of pain that would otherwise be avoidable. And as AI becomes performant, that pain is going to shift from the companies that make these early mistakes to the people that are being laid off and displaced by them. And so at least providing some assurance and requirements. Germany probably does this the best of many of the countries that I cover, assuring that there are programs in place if you're planning mass layoffs that allow for that force the retraining and replacement of the people that have been laid off. Replacement, 2 words, not replacement, 1 word. So the very nature of this technology is forced down a positive path. Otherwise, my fear is it's eventually going to find the negative path, and it's just going to go crazy. And we've certainly seen that in the past as we've lived under the cloud of nuclear destruction for decades now. We don't want to live under a much faster moving cloud of AI destruction, which I'm afraid is the path that we're currently on, particularly with some of the really concerning levels of development that are going on in defense. So I think the adults should enter the room, and at the very least, government should bring on board AI experts that can advise on what kinds of things can be done to provide protections without slowing the rate of advancement, because we're also in a weapons race with AI. And so slowing down development in one country isn't going to do that country any good. They're just going to fall behind the other countries. And so you have to maintain development speed, but make sure the things you're developing aren't going to destroy the country that's developing it. And there's where I think we're going to struggle going forward. This is an exciting time, but exciting times can be good and be bad. And I believe there's a Chinese curse that says something to the effect that may you be born in exciting times. We are. And I think that means we do need to be extraordinarily careful that the things that we're developing really will be used for our benefit, and that the people that might use them to our detriment are contained, controlled, and prevented from doing so.
Thank you. Dr. Tamanna, what's your closing remarks for today?
Yes, I personally feel that, AGI can be wonderful. It can do real wonders. And, as far as the medicine system is concerned, as far as several diseases are concerned, mental health is concerned, so a robot can be a major help to somebody who is suffering from mental illness, and cancers of different kinds, for example, they could be taken care of. And people who are suicidal, for example, they could be helped. So those kind of things are there. Space is one area which is of major concern, and also household work and the situation of environment right now is a major concern. So there are certain things, and also, taking care of the nuclear issue, that has to be understood pretty well. So, I personally feel that, these things are the areas where AGI can be of help. And human beings, for example, we need to understand that technology can be helpful, but to what extent can it be helpful? There can be pros and cons, both of the whole thing, of AGI. But I'm sure it is going to be of major help to mankind. If there is any flaw in it, it should be, pruned in such a way that that any kind of differences in technology or anything of difference of opinions should be taken care of, and accordingly AGI should be formed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. This is an interesting discussion. So I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible. And tomorrow, same time, we're going to discuss on AI agent. So thank you, Mr. David, and thank you, Dr. Tamanna, for your continuous support for World Health Economic Forum. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.